I'm just going to talk through a few of the reasons why we wanted to help with this event and why we wrote the report, and some questions we have as Arup that we hope to solve with sort of a community of friends and practitioners that are all trying to get their head around what is this blockchain thing, or maybe after today where it seemed to be clearer what it is, but what should we do with it, you know, and where does it fit really into our business? So my job in Arup is the bottom right there. It's called a data leader. At that point my daughter usually looks at me and goes, "What is that?" And I say, "Oh, other companies they call it chief data officer." At that point she's even more confused, and she questions, "Oh, what is this all about?" And the way I try to frame it usually is that in this sort of newer world, I think that Alan talked about in this sort of this digital agenda, we see data as much more than we see data as much more than just the ingredient in a Revit file or something that goes on a drawing. So we're starting to question the role of data in our projects, and we do about 19,000 projects at any point in time. And where is that data? Are we really doing everything with it that we can? Are we using it fast enough and in the best possible way? A project for us could be one person working on something, or hundreds of people working on projects like High Speed 2. So how do we work with data in that context? The second problem, challenge, opportunity is we've got 15,000 people who constantly produce data and constantly consume data. So what's the relationship between our people and our data? That happens in 75 countries around the world. So the question of GDPR is our core approach around privacy globally actually, but some countries don't actually care as much about it or tell us to perhaps be more casual or flexible or creative with data from their point of view, which we don't really want to be because we think there's a ethical dimension to how we work with data. We have 50 disciplines, so our water engineers have a very different view on data than our fire, our behavioral psychologists, our economists. And so we got to this point where we said we probably need to understand all the data we have, and that's not a trivial exercise. The second bit is we need to understand all the data we need. So what is in front of us, or what else do we need to have than the data we already have? So our project data is increasingly moving away from our servers into third-party software solutions and PaaS systems, where the data moves into places where we don't really know what's happening to it all the time. We are constantly consuming third-party data. So we've currently got a product here called Mobility Mosaic, where we use an app where we capture highly granular transport data, fully multimodal, to understand movement patterns of 10 people approaching a station, thousands of people or millions of people. So the new data that we generate or the new data that we need is constantly growing around us too. Our clients are starting to push data towards us, and no longer in files. It's machine integrated, increasingly using APIs to say we want to transact with you completely digitally in this world. So what is the data we have? What is all the data we need? And then how do we get the blend right between technology, data and the creativity and our domain understanding, which we hope together creates sort of a newer Arup intelligence or a newer Arup understanding of the built environment that our clients benefit from, either through design or advice or other means that create value in this data-driven world. And it's driven by our aims. They haven't changed. Commercial imperatives still are important. I mean, we're an employer-owned company, so we don't have shareholders, but we still like to make a profit. And we like to be independent, and we like to be in control of our destiny, so you need to be financially solvent at any point in time as a company. But we also want to achieve social usefulness. So how does data that we have, or the data that we need, relate to our aims of social usefulness? And then the third question is, how do we work as well as it can be done? That was one of our mantras of our founder of Arup, to say a job is only well done if it is done as well as it can be done. And that applies to our work with data too. So with this in mind, I was sitting here about a year ago, and we had our activists, who I think are the real heroes in this story from an Arab point of view, which is actually not the report we are promoting today, but a report that was previously issued by our Berlin office. And we had Matthias Geipel and Christopher Kinnard in Arup sort of shouting about this before the board or any of us in any executive role was really listening or interested. So one thing we found was, if you want to understand emerging technologies, you need to bring the activists and the enthusiasts much earlier and much faster into the discussion and into the debate about what we want to do. So that's why we wrote the second report, to really go a bit deeper now into what does it really mean for our industry. And the three principal questions we're asking and where we're looking for partners and help is, we pretty much agree this is now in the emerging technology categories that you cannot ignore. So as a company to say blockchain, a bit like smart cities, could be anything from low carbon aluminium to talking fridges, don't really know, don't really care. We don't really see that. We think we've seen enough evidence, and in the different case studies in water, in buildings and energy, to sustain this as a thing we need to get our head around. But the two things we are not clear, and where we seek answers through this research, is, will it be disruptive? So emerging is one thing, but disruptive in an industry is an entirely different question. Will it get to a point where it is in finance right now? If so, when and where will it become disruptive in the core industries that we operate in? And then the second key question, if it is disruptive in the industries we work in, will it be transformative in the way that we work as a firm with our and our clients? Because we're going through that right now with cloud computing, machine learning, AI. There's a number of emerging core technologies that will be not just emerging, they will be disruptive and transformative across all our staff, everything we do, all our client relationships. So the basic and simple questions we have to all of you guys to answer with us, we know it's emerging, but will it also be disruptive and transformative in everything we do? And we haven't yet found the answer to that, and we hope this report will make a contribution to that. And that's why we invested in this community of activists that is growing across Arup. So we're finding everywhere people playing with this, not just now in Berlin, in several offices, and we want to encourage that. We like to strike relationships with universities and academia, but also with other larger organizations and businesses like ourselves who start to experiment and are going from this experimentation now into early phases of deployment. Because we don't think we're going to find these answers on our own. So that is the principal question we have. Do we have to change something? Do we have to change a lot? Do we have to change everything at one point in time? And is blockchain one of those technologies that goes that far in the way it affects us? Or will it be, like many other technologies in the past, give us time and space to adjust to it? So if you think about personal computing and CAD technology, which all of you in the construction industry will now understand, well, it took us about 10, 15 years to have a ubiquitous proliferation of these technologies in everything we do. So as a company, that's not disruptive. It is transformative, but it's not disruptive. It happens over a long arc of time, and you can get there. Cloud computing, if you think it's going to take you 10, 15 years for full adoption, by the time you are adopted, you are history. So where does blockchain fit in? So that was the question we had, and I hope today has been a good discussion on that. I hope it's been helpful for all of you guys too, and over lunch you'll do a bit more networking and connecting. There's a couple of things I've been asked to say. One is that there's a form. I mean, you can't do an event without a feedback form. So there's a form that has space for your card. I'm remembering my instructions, even though I didn't write them down. There's a space with a card. We can put your space for your business card, and we can put some comments down on the event or what you might like to do with us. Second, I'd like to thank Bella, who usually doesn't put herself in the foreground, but without her we wouldn't have this event, and we certainly would not have this report. I don't know how it is in your organizations, but emerging technologies comes with strong opinion lightly held. Everybody has a view, everybody thinks they are right. Trying to condense that into 60 or 70 pages and getting a fair degree of consensus around it is not a trivial task, so thank you very much for that. And then finally, if we have a minute, I wouldn't mind having just 1 or 2 points of feedback on where you think we are right now with the blockchain industry, or if you've got any other question for us as Arup and what we do next.
Thanks for that. Beyond thought leadership, what has Arup tested out? If you can talk us through that. Have you tried using blockchain within Arup? Were there any specific cases that you've used, so on and so forth?
It's a perfect question. You will have to read the report for that. So we've got a section in there, and we're seeing it right now. Classic stuff, people talk about smart contracts. We quite like to do a bit more energy in our ideas around sustainability and circular economy. There are some interesting projects popping up. But we also have people just doing interesting stuff because they can. You know, setting up their own blockchain, experimenting with it. So we've written a timeline in the report from about 2013, when we did the sort of first true bottom-up experiments, to what's happening right now and how that is growing out in the company.
Any more questions? Yep.
If an organisation wanted to work with Arup on a proof of concept or something interesting, what's the best avenues? Because these organisations are very large, there's many people. Is there a process in place to partner and collaborate in that way?
Research requests from universities will go to Bella and the Arup University, where we try to get our head around who's doing what with us in terms of research. Most of the work we do with startups right now, or also bigger companies too, really comes via the activist network, if I'm honest, because it's currently not formative enough to put a proper process on top. You know, we found if you do it too early, you create more bureaucracy than activity. So Matthias, Christian, the people in the back of the report who are doing the work right now, that's why I would get in touch, and that's what they want to do. If people, we do this with another technology right now, where sort of our tier 1 clients say, we'd like to experiment with something in the real world. We then set up sort of specific teams where we can partner on that, because the risk is a bit higher. You know, you can't just take the, I don't know, what is a project that is long gone now? The London Olympics was one of my key clients when I did our consultancy work. You can't really just go in there and completely experiment, but we quite like to do some of the experimentation with real clients and real context. So if there's a client who has a big idea, or we want to do something with them, we'll set up a special sort of tiger team that deals with that approach.